Hello, good morning and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today from the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper. And before we start, two important announcements. The first is the Conquer Mains, an initiative for those appearing in Mains 2024. In about 90 hours, in about 60 classes, we shall cover all the important topics relevant for the Mains examination. Live classes, answer writing, informative material, all that will be provided to you. Should you wish to enroll, this is the information that you need to know. Second, the live classroom program called the Achievers Batch that I've been telling you over the past few days, which will be launching on the June 25. We'll start with Indian polity, the subject that I will be taking. Should you wish to enroll in that program, please reach out to us and reach out today, because I'm told today is the last day of an interesting discount rebate on the course fee. You will get 15 months of subscription at 24,999. Live classes, unlimited access to the recordings of these live classes, test series, weekly tests, so on and so forth, study material, all that is included in this course. Let's get started and let's quickly look at where does India stand with respect to G7. G7 is an intergovernmental...
See India stand with respect to G7 in your contacts.
Intergovernmental forum and it consists of countries which are major IMF economies, major economies of the world. For example, United States and Canada when it comes to Northern America. When it comes to Asia, we have Japan. When it comes to Europe, we have United Kingdom, we have Germany, we have France, and we have Italy. These are the 7 major economies of the world, part of G7. European Union is considered to be non-enumerated member of G7. And this G7 group of countries, they meet every year. And what do they discuss? They discuss challenges with respect to trade, with respect to economy, with respect to climate change, with respect to security. And if you can trace the origins of G7, we can say that G7 traces its origin way back to 1973, when there was an informal meeting of the finance ministers of 3 European countries, Germany, France, and United Kingdom. They met, and ultimately then it was the then US president who gave us space at the White House for them to organize a meeting. US also became part of this. And then because of the addition of Canada, because of the addition of Japan, because of the addition of Italy, it came to be known as G7. The year was 1998 when Russia also became part of this group, and that is how, with the inclusion of Russia, G7 became G8. But something else happened. The year was 2014 when what Russia did, Russia annexed Crimea. And it was because of this action by Russia that Russia was temporarily suspended from G8. And then this G8 became G7 again. Then it was in the year 2017 that Russia decided to permanently withdraw from this group. So now it is a G7 group. Although there were efforts made by Donald Trump as the President of the United States of America, who was also supported by Italy in 2020, that we should bring Russia back to this group, but it was vehemently opposed by the other countries. So long story short, it remains as G7. And when I say G7, and the heads of these countries, they meet every year to discuss challenges with respect to trade, economy, climate change, security. After that general meeting, after that real meeting of the G7 heads, then there is an outreach. What do we mean by that? Listen to me carefully. The heads of G7 countries, they meet every year to discuss important issues, and after that meeting, next day normally, there is an outreach program or an outreach meeting where these G7 countries or the host of that G7 summit is also inviting other important countries. What about India? India was first invited, and these facts sometimes become important for your civil services examination, particularly the prelims examination. India was for the first time invited in the year 2005 when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, and in total India has been invited 11 times to this G7 outreach meeting, and that is also significant. In fact, Mr. Modi has attended the G7 meetings 5 times in his career. But the point is, India is not an ordinary country. India is also considered to be one of the important leaders of the global south. Global south consists of countries which are underdeveloped or developing or less developed countries, whether these countries are in Latin America, Caribbean, Africa, Asia. We can exclude countries such as Japan, South Korea, or even in Oceania. These are the group of countries which are least developed or developing or less developed, but they also want an important place on the world forum. And India is one of the important leaders of this global south. In fact, since 2023, India also has been hosting Voice of Global South Conference since 2023. So India is an important player. And considering the fact that we were in the middle of 2024 election campaign season, Italy was the host of the G7 summit. The leader of Italy is calling Prime Minister during the middle of the campaign season to ensure that India attends this outreach program. That speaks volumes about the significance of India. And in fact, Prime Minister Modi traveled to Italy for this summit just 4 days after his swearing-in ceremony, even without waiting for getting the confidence motion passed in the Lok Sabha, without proving his majority on the floor of the Lok Sabha, because the government does not, the BJP on its own does not have the majority on the floor of the Lok Sabha. That speaks volumes about the significance that India also attaches to G7. But this G7 has come under heavy criticism as well. Why criticism? Because this G7 is considered to be an elitist group of countries. Only the elite group of countries are part of this grouping, number one. Number two, 3 of the top 10 economies of the world, they are not part of this group. If we look at China, if we look at India, if we look at Brazil, 3 of the top 10 economies of the world, they are not part of this group. So this group is elitist. This group does not include one of the 3 of the top 10 economies of the world. In fact, if we look at BRICS, which started off with Brazil, India, China, then South Africa also got added, Russia was part of it. BRICS has almost doubled its membership and has included countries such as United Arab Emirates, has included other countries. But when it comes to G7, it has not expanded its membership. In fact, it has reduced its membership after the suspension of Russia. It has reduced its membership by 1, whereas other bloc, such as the BRICS bloc, which includes countries which are important major economies, or which we say emerging economies, also the countries which are very popular in terms of their energy security. For example, the Emirate of United Arab Emirates. All these are important countries which have been made part of BRICS. Saudi Arabia, for example, Egypt, for example. In fact, Iran, for example, Ethiopia, these are the countries which have been included in BRICS. So BRICS has almost doubled its membership, and G7 group of countries instead has reduced its membership by 1. These were the criticisms. But the major criticism also is, what is the role that G7 has played over the past few years? It has not been successful in stopping Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now you can say United Nations also has failed, but G7 is considered to be one of the powerful group of countries, bloc of countries of the world. It has failed to stop the invasion of Russia, or at least end the Russian war or invasion of Ukraine. It has failed spectacularly. It has failed to ensure that there is a ceasefire when it comes to Gaza. Because after what happened in October 2023, when the terrorists from Hamas crossed the Gaza-Israeli border, killed Israeli citizens, took some of them hostages as well, then there was a full-blown war between Israel and Hamas, which also expanded to Rafah as well. There are allegations that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza and Rafah. But even then, forget about United Nations Security Council, even this very powerful group of countries, G7, has failed to do that, has failed to ensure that the Israeli actions are put on hold. Third, what about China's widening influence because of its Belt and Road Initiative, because of its One Belt, One Road Initiative? All these important initiatives, according to China, but they have also been able to expand the territorial influence of China, and G7 is unable to check that as well. These are some of the criticisms that have been leveled against G7 over the past few years, and that is why we have a mains-based question for you. BRICS is doubling its membership. Is this bloc a new rival for the G7? What is the role of India with respect to G7? India is not part of G7, but it has been invited to the outreach programs of G7 11 times in the past, the first in 2005, which speaks volumes about the significance that these group of countries attach to India, because after all, India is a very, very big market for these countries. Write an answer to this question and let's discuss another important topic known as are heat waves. Are heat waves natural disasters? Heat waves, which have engulfed northern India over the past couple of months. It has resulted in the loss of almost 100 lives, according to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Although this newspaper article says most of the deaths may have gone unreported, unnoticed. Nevertheless, heat wave is a reality. People dying from it is a reality. For that, we have an act called National Disaster Management Act. Because the question that this particular article is asking is, are heat waves natural disasters? We have a law, a principal piece of legislation called National Disaster Management Act. According to this act, it governs the roles of center and state. In doing what? It governs the role of center and state in ensuring the response of the center and the state to natural disasters. And for that, we have Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the nodal agency of National Disaster Management authority. What this act also does, it creates State Disaster Response Fund, abbreviated as SDRF, and it also creates Center Disaster Response Fund. Clear? But how do these funds get the allocation? Where do they get the allocation from? Where do they get the money from? They get the money on the basis of the recommendations of the Finance Commission, which is constituted every 5 years by the President of India at the central level under Article 280 of the Constitution. When it comes to State Disaster Response Fund, 75% is shared by the centre. It's the share of the centre. 25% is to be contributed by the states. But if it's a general category state, what if it's a special category state? For example, the 7 sisters of Northeast, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir. In that case, the centre contributes 90% and 10% is contributed by the states themselves. But when it comes to the centre or Central Disaster Response Fund or National Disaster Response Fund, the entire contribution is given by the centre, is contributed by the centre. And it is from this fund, State Disaster Response Fund or National Disaster Response Fund, that funds are made, allocated, response is given, compensation is given to those who have been affected by the natural disasters. But which are these natural disasters? These natural disasters are 12 in number based on the recommendation of the Finance Commission. Which are these 12 national disasters which are mentioned under this Act, for which compensation will be provided out of the State Disaster Response Fund or National Disaster Response Fund? These 12 disasters are cyclone, drought, earthquake, fire, tsunami, hailstorm, landslides, avalanche, cloudburst, pest attack, we have frost, we have, what's the other one? We have cold waves as well. So it clearly means that heat waves are not included in the list of 12 notified natural disasters. So which means if heat waves lead to deaths of the individuals, compensation cannot be provided out of these funds by the governments. But there is one alternative. And before I tell you the alternative, the 16th Finance Commission is underway. And this article talks about that maybe the states will persuade the Finance Commission, will request the Finance Commission that we should expand the pool of these natural disasters. Although Finance Commission has said previously that all these 12 natural disasters that are covered under the Act, for which we decide the allocation, these are more than enough to meet all the requirements of the states. But it may be possible that the states will now try and persuade the Finance Commission to expand the scope of these natural disasters to increase this list. But even if heat waves are not the natural disasters mentioned under the National Disaster Management Act, even then the states can provide compensation to the victims of the heat wave. How? 10% of this fund, 10% of the allocation, 10% of the funds which are available under the State Disaster Response Fund, 10% of it can be given to those disasters of local context. That means state government can classify a disaster which is not mentioned in the 12 list of notified disasters as a disaster in local context, and 10% of the funds that are available in the State Disaster Response Fund can be made available to provide compensation to the victims of heat wave, for example. But be that as it may, from this particular topic, you can expect a question on in GS4 as well, ethics, integrity and aptitude. A case study may be provided. What is that case study? For example, the case study will say, you are the head of a district, you are the district collector, and the Indian Meteorological Department has issued a warning of a heat wave. Because what also happens is that there is something called heat action plan. There is one authority called National Disaster Management Authority, which is a statutory authority under this Act. This National Disaster Management Authority, along with Indian Meteorological Department, what do? They prepare a kind of a heat action plan. They look at the past trends of this particular area, with how much frequency heat waves have been part of this area. So many other factors are taken into consideration to prepare for this heat action plan. What if you are the head of a district, you are the district collector? IMD has notified that there can be a period of intense heat wave in your district in the next 15 days. What are the innovative steps that you can take to prevent deaths due to extreme heat or heat wave? What are the steps? Can you plant trees? You can, but this is not an innovative solution. Why? Because planting trees, you may do it now, but the effect of it will not be visibly seen in those 15 days because it takes a lot of time for a tree to grow. So what are the innovative steps that you can take? One, you will have to look at who is the vulnerable section of the society. These are elderly. These are children. For elderly and children, what we basically need, we need communication strategy. And what is that communication strategy going to be? All India radio bulletins should frequently mention that there is going to be an intense heat wave, urging the elderly to stay indoors and not leave unless and until it is extremely important. For particularly children, maybe we can change the school timings. And ensure that the timing of the school is changed in such a manner that these children are brought back home before 12 noon, when the sun is at its peak. Not just this, we need drinking water readily available. As a district collector, you have to ensure that drinking water is made readily available. You may also make ORS solutions readily available. What we also need to ensure that MG Narega works should be suspended. Because under MG Narega, if there are workers who are doing manual work, who are digging holes, for example, wells, for example, who are leveling the road, for example, they will come under the extreme heat and they are more likely to bear the brunt of the heat wave. So MG Narega work should be suspended for that period, for 15 days. Also look at the public parks. Public parks in some areas are normally closed during the day. They're open during the morning. They are again open during the evening for people to take a walk. But these public parks should be open during the day as well, so that a rickshaw puller who has no other option but to sell his produce in the open market, or a traffic policeman can rest under the shade. Also, we need to ensure that construction workers, who are again a vulnerable lot, If at all possible, construction work should also be stopped for 15 days. But what will these construction workers eat then? Maybe they should be expanded and they should come under the ambit of the free Anna Yojana scheme, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. So when you mix schemes, when you mix these innovative solutions, communication strategy in your ethics case study answer, that will lend a lot of credibility to your answer. And that is something that you need to know from this article, which talks about are heat waves natural disasters. Clear? Let's look at another important article. What can railways do to stop accidents? Now listen to me carefully. A goods train hit Kanchenjunga Express. Clear? Killed 10 people. Initially what happened? Railway board said it is the loco pilot who is responsible for this. And loco pilot ultimately had died as well. But then this railway board quickly retracted and said, no, we will carry out an investigation. But then investigation will be biased. Because initially you said it is the locomotive driver who is responsible for this. But be that as it may, it is not possible in India that trains are moving on the instructions of one individual. So this accident cannot be because of one individual. And in fact, this locomotive driver, this goods carrier driver, he had enough sleep as well. It's not that he was overburdened with work and because of that he made an error. So that is set aside. But the other point is, trains cannot move on rails on the instruction of one individual. Why? Because this is one station. This is another station. The train has to move from one station to another station. You have a station master here as well. You have a station master here as well. And at the divisional headquarters, you have another officer. They're all coordinating with each other. Then there are those individuals who signal the trains. Then there is a gate man as well. So it is through coordinated efforts of these individuals that ultimately you allow the train to pass. You stop a particular train. You ensure that on a particular rail, on a particular track, only one train is traveling. So it is not possible that because of the laxity of one individual, this train accident has taken place. There will be investigation, but then we have seen that this investigation will lead to action against lower level officials. The higher level officials almost always go scot-free. Then what happens in this case? There was an analysis done, an analysis report by High Level Safety Review Committee 2017. Mukesh Mehrotra says that only 3% of the accidents in Indian railways are due to failure of equipment. So it is not because of failure of equipment. Most of the accidents in India have a human angle to it. Human failure is causing most of the accidents. In this case, for example, what if there is a signal failure? The train is moving, there is a signal, whether you are allowed to pass or you are told to stop, the signal has failed. In this case, what will happen? In this case, what station master does, he issues a notice under what is called TA 912 and then issues a line clear ticket. That means what? There is a signal failure. The train has to move. Now, will the train move or not? Will the train cross the signal or not? For that, if there is an automatic signal failure, what the station master will do, will issue a TA 912 notice and a line clear ticket, which basically allows this locomotive driver to pass through that signal. This is when there is an automatic signal failure. But what if there is a signal failure at night? Or what if there is a signal failure during the day? In this case, what happens? The driver has to stop for 1 minute during the day and 2 minutes during the night. And after that, the driver has to pass very slowly at close to 15 kilometers an hour so that whenever the driver sees an obstruction, you can stop the train. Which basically means that in this particular case, what happened when this goods train hit Kanchenjunga Express? In this case, according to newspaper reports, it was communicated that there is a signal failure. When it was communicated that there is a signal failure, now investigation has to decide who all were privy to such information and what steps did they take to prevent this mishap. But what about Kavach? A very important, fruitful device designed by Indian Railways along with research, design and standards organization, RDSO. What is this Kavach? It's an important instrument with radio frequency identification tags which will move on the rails because of signals automatically. Because of this Kavach, what would happen when on this particular track both trains are moving at the same time? What this Kavach would have done, it would have automatically started braking. That means automatic braking would have taken place. It is argued that this goods train, it was traveling at 45 kilometers per hour. If Kavach would have been installed on this track, automatic braking would have resulted and ultimately the train would have slowed down and this mishap would have been averted. But there was no Kavach installed here. Why? Because of lack of vendors. Kavach has been installed, is operational in only 1500 kilometers because you have to install Kavach devices along the tracks. These radio frequency identification tags, which has a geo-positioning system as well. Then all the communication is through radio conferences. There is a device as well which the locomotive driver can see. So everything is done perfectly. Although you still need manual intervention, but this is automatic system that works. But Kavach has been installed only along the track of 1500 kilometers, while as Indian Railway spans how much? 68,000 kilometers. But as I said before, most of the major accidents that have taken place in India, railway accidents, that is because of the human failure. And you know what? In Indian Railways, there is a vacancy of close to 18,799 loco pilots. So we need to fill the vacancy. That's one solution. How can the railways, what railways can do to stop these accidents? Fill the vacancies. Because most of the times these loco drivers, they do not get enough sleep. And because of lack of sleep, they tend to make human errors. And that is what causes mishaps. Second, who makes the rules? Who controls the operation of the railways? Who ensures all the safety? All that is vested with one body called Railway Board, which means there won't be accountability. You are as if you are the judge, jury and the executioner at the same time. That is why there have been demands that there should be an independent statutory railway safety committee which should oversee, which should keep a check of how the safety mechanisms are being implemented in the railways. Don't entrust every responsibility to the Railway Board. And then there is a bigger problem as well. Most of the revenue that railways gets, and this is where we need political will as well. Railway is an emotional issue. People vote for a political party or the candidate based on whether that government has assigned a railway track for our constituency or not, for our place or not, for our state or not. There was a time when a particular railway minister boasted that in my 5-year term as the railway minister, I never increased the prices or the ticket price for the passengers. Maybe this is not something to be boastful of. Why? Because if you're not increasing the passenger rates, ticket rates, you are basically subsidizing passengers at the cost of the freight carriers. That means freight charges you are increasing, which also leads to inflation as well, which also leads to wastage. So what we need more investment into the safety mechanisms in railways. We need to recruit more people. We need to create an independent statutory railway safety authority. And for that, we need more investment in railways. And that can happen when you're also increasing the price of the ticket price for the passengers as well, which will bring in the pool of revenue, money, and that will be invested in creating a safe environment for the passengers traveling in Indian railways. That is what you need to understand from this topic. What can the railways do to stop accidents? Look at the mains-based question in 250 words. Despite repeated train accidents, implementation of safety measures remains slow and inadequate. Discuss. Clear? Let's look at another topic. New criminal law bill has no section on rape of men transgender people. There was section 377 of Indian Penal Code, which said whoever voluntarily has carnal intercourse that too against the order of nature it is a crime under section 377 of Indian Penal Code. But what is a carnal intercourse? Any sexual interaction which is not peno-vaginal in nature, which does not involve the two organs of males and females. Any such interaction is an unnatural offense which is against the order of nature. And it was this section 377 of Indian Penal Code which criminalized homosexuality. A consensual sexual activity between two same sexes, man and man, women and women, it used to be criminalized by section 377 of Indian Penal Code. But not just this. This section 377 would also cover sexual activity which is against the order of nature. For example, a husband forcing anal sex on her wife. That is considered to be against the order of nature, and as such is a crime under section 377 of Indian Penal Code, despite the fact that there is no such thing as marital rape. But marital rape is different. Here this is an anal sex forced by husband on her wife, on his wife. That is covered, that can be covered under section 377. Plus bestiality. Sexual intercourse against animals, where animals cannot give consent. So section 377 encompassed a wide variety of criminal activities. But it was mostly used or mostly known as criminalizing homosexuality. A landmark judgment was given by the Supreme Court, Navte Johar versus Union of India, where Supreme Court did not declare section 377 as unconstitutional, did not strike down section 377. This section 377 was only read down. Read down in the sense that insofar as section 377 was used to criminalize, penalize homosexuals, in that way it is unconstitutional. In that way, section 377 cannot be used to criminalize adult consensual sexual activity amongst homosexuals against the members of LGBTQIA plus community. Lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgenders, queers, intersex, asexuals. But bestiality was still a crime. Forcing anal sex on your wife against her consent, that was still a crime. If a man or a transgender was raped by another man, that was a crime because it is against the order of nature under section 377 of Indian Penal Code. But beginning 1st July 2024, what will happen? This Indian Penal Code will be replaced by Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which the government says we want to decolonialize our laws. And there are some people who say just by renaming Indian Penal Code in the Hindi term Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita does not make any difference. There are also southern states which are saying that you should not have given Hindi name to these three laws, which will replace criminal procedure, Indian Penal Code, Indian Evidence Act, because how will our judges or lawyers, advocates pronounce these Hindi names? So this is forceful imposition of Hindi on the non-Hindi speaking population of the southern India. But be that as it may, this Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita does not have the equivalent of section 377. That does not mean that these people are asking for section 377 to be reinstated. No. They are saying section 377 was read down. So insofar as it criminalized homosexuality, we don't want that provision again. But there still needs to be a law which can criminalize sex with animals, which is bestiality, which can still penalize rape of a man or a transgender by another man. Since in absence of section 377 like provision, what will happen in this case? There will be no law which can provide justice to those men and transgenders who are raped by men. So maximum what will happen in that case? That doesn't mean you will go scot-free if you commit a rape on a transgender or a man. The maximum charges that can be filed against you is that of grievous hurt. And grievous hurt is not considered to be such a serious offense or a heinous offense as section 377 case was considered. Which means bail will be easily given to the accused. And when bail will be easily given to the accused will tamper with the evidence. That is why there are lawyers such as Ms. Karunanandi, there are also lawyers such as Anand Grover who are saying that we should have an equivalent of section 377 in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, specifically and only for those accused offenders who will commit bestiality, who will commit rape against transgender and men, because Ms. Nandi says that non-inclusion of section 377 will also imply that men who have committed anal rapes of their wives would also not face criminal consequences if this new code is not amended. That's what you need to know from this particular article. New criminal law has no section on rape of men, transgender people. Clear? If you are understanding this lecture, please don't forget to press the like button as well. Drop in your comments as well. Let's look at some prelims focused topics. PM Modi likely to skip SCO summit in Kazakhstan. Xi, Putin, Sharif may attend. What is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? It is a permanent intergovernmental organization. Initially, the predecessor of SCO is considered to be Shanghai 5, which had countries such as China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. But then in the year 2001, Uzbekistan got added. And that's how it became SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it has now an objective. It has goals. And these are 4 important goals that you must keep track of. To strengthen mutual trust, friendship and good neighborliness between member states, to encourage effective cooperation between member states in such affairs such as politics, trade, economy, science and technology, climate change, so on and so forth, to jointly ensure and maintain peace, security, stability in the region. But look at the last point: to promote a new democratic, fair and rational international political and economic international order. Because these newly independent countries of Asia and Africa, these emerging economies, developing economies, they have long held a grudge against the elitist Western bloc. Because they have controlled everything. They control International Monetary Fund. They control World Bank. Why is it that the head of the World Bank always has to be from America, and the head of IMF always has to be a European? They control these institutions: IMF, World Bank, United Nations Security Council, all the institutions. So all these countries who are against the elitist Western bloc, they are trying either to reform United Nations and these organizations, or campaign for their reforms, or they are setting up parallel intergovernmental institutions, organizations, because they want these organizations to challenge the established organizations. And that is how they wish to create a rational, a fair political and economic system in the world. But who are the members of the SCO? Initially, as I said, it was China, Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Kazakhstan who were the members, called Shanghai 5. Then Uzbekistan joined. It became Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And then in 2017, both India and Pakistan together became the member of the SCO. Then we saw this year, Iran became the member, the latest member of the SCO. We now have 3 observer states as well: Afghanistan, Belarus and Mongolia. And this SCO, it has 2 standing bodies. It has a secretariat at Beijing. It has an executive committee called of Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, RATS, which is in Tashkent. But what do we have to discuss? There are 2 important groups, or 2 important committees, as we can say, of decision-making bodies of SCO. One is the Council of Heads of State, and the other is Council of Heads of Government. The supreme decision-making body of SCO is this, where all the decisions are taken. And it is this Council of Heads of State which meets every year. These facts are very important, can be relevant for your prelims exam, whether they meet twice a year or once every year. This Council of Heads of State, it performs functions such as what should be the priority area, what should be the strategy of the SCO, how do we, and they approve the budget as well. So Council of Heads of State, it's the supreme decision-making body of the SCO where all the decisions are taken. They meet every year. Then we have Council of Heads of Governments, which also meets every year. It approves the budget. It decides what should be the priority of this organization, what should be the strategy that we need to follow. This Council of Heads of State meeting, which will be conducted in Kazakhstan, Prime Minister Modi, according to this newspaper article, is likely to miss. When he's likely to miss, which means he may miss another summit, which is Council of Heads of Government, which will be conducted in Islamabad, Pakistan. And that may be significant because that will ensure that Indian Prime Minister is not stepping on the soil of Pakistan once again. But be that as it may, this is what you need to know regarding Shanghai Cooperation Organization. What are these 2 councils? When was this Shanghai Cooperation Organization constituted? who was the predecessor of this organization, what are the goals of this organization, who are the members, who are the observer states, and what are the two important standing bodies of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Keep that in mind, can be important for your prelims examination. Now let's look at the last article that we have to discuss. India bloc Lok Sabha MPs not to assist pro tem speaker. And yesterday, the first newspaper article that we discussed, I spoke in great detail about the pro tem speaker. Who is the pro tem speaker? How the pro tem speaker is selected? How the pro tem speaker is appointed? Who administers oath to the pro tem speaker? And I also told you that pro tem speaker, apart from pro tem speaker, we also have 3 other members. And who are these 3 other members? They basically assist the pro tem speaker in administering oath to the newly elected MPs. Pro tem speaker is administered oath by the president, and pro tem speaker administers oath to these 3 members as well, and other members of the parliament as well, other members of the Lok Sabha as well. But to assist pro tem speaker, we need these 3 other members, and these 3 other members are also senior most members of the Lok Sabha in terms of their tenure in Lok Sabha. That's something that we discussed yesterday. These 3 other members are from India bloc, the opposition bloc. One is Mr. Kodikunil Suresh, who has been an 8-time MP of the parliament, and he was considered to be the fit person to be the pro tem speaker, but he was ignored. Why? Because the government said that his terms were not continuous. Instead, Mr. Mehtab, who is an MP from Odisha, he has had a 7th consecutive term in the parliament. But be that as it may, the other is T.R. Balu of the DMK, the other is Sundeep Bandyopadhyay of the Trinamool. All 3 of them, they have decided that we will not assist the pro tem speaker. But 2 other members also have been appointed. Perhaps the government realized that maybe they will boycott, then what will we do? In that case, these 2 MPs are from the BJP. And these 2 MPs, since they are part of these other members, they will be there just in case the pro tem speaker needs assistance, needs some help in administering oath to the newly elected MPs of the Lok Sabha. That is what we needed to discuss today. That is it from the analysis of the Hindu newspaper today. If you have understood what we discussed today, please let me know in the comment section, and see you tomorrow again at 10 o'clock in the morning. Till then, have a great time. All the best.